Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everything Iconic with me, Danny Pellegrino. I'm here with Chelsea Handler, who's got a new book out. I'll have what she's having. Chelsea, how are you today?
I'm well, thank you. How are you doing?
Good. The book is so good. I was up late laughing and enjoying it. I'm not quite finished. I do apologize. But I'm about 200 pages in, so I'm at the tail end and so good. I just love your writing so much. And I hope you don't mind. I'm going to gush for a second because your writing has been so impactful to me. I'm an author myself, and I remember so vividly when I lived in Chicago about 15 years ago, picking up your book, and there was a guy named Joel Durfner. It was My Horizontal Life, which was your first book, and this other book, Swish. And I remember getting him at a bookstore and being like, "Oh my God, people are writing and they're being funny about their dating lives and their work lives and all of these kinds of things." And it sort of opened up a whole world for me. So I just have to say thank you.
Oh, thank you. Love to hear that.
So what is it like now? This is your seventh book. Do you still, I don't know, what's the process like for you still going into another book?
I mean, this book was born out of like I had a very public relationship with Joe Coy, another comedian, and this book kind of came about because of that relationship. Because I was in this public romance, and everyone was so excited and happy for me, and it was so sweet the public's reaction to the relationship, and it was very public facing, and so an editor approached me and was like, "We would love for you to write a book about falling in love. Like, if you can fall in love, then anyone can, and we want to hear about it." And I was all for it. I thought, wow, yeah, what an unexpected kind of treat for me to be the person singing from rooftops about this love affair and this great new relationship. I thought for sure, we were going to end up together, all of those things. And so I took the book on under that umbrella, and then we broke up, and then I thought, well, what am I going to write about now? And I had done this really meaningful episode with Glennon Doyle's on her podcast called "We Can Do Hard Things" about the breakup and about the being different in a breakup. Growing up enough to understand how to be graceful within a breakup, not to repeat past behaviors and old patterns and kind of nastiness. And then we thought, okay, maybe the book should be about that breakup. And then I thought, I'm not devoting an entire book to one breakup. I've had many breakups, and I'll probably have many more. And it doesn't seem right for me to write only about that. So then I just kind of put it on hold, and I thought, well, I don't really know if I have a book in me right now then. And my editor said, no, think about it. I think you have something. You just have to figure out what that is. And I took about 6 months off, and didn't really think about it. And then I just thought about what do I have to say about this point in my life? What do I have to say after I've shared so much with everybody for so many years? The good, the bad, the ugly, the funny, the not funny, the embarrassing, the humiliating. I thought, where am I now? Post therapy, post. I'm about to be 50. I have all of this kind of knowledge, but is it new? Like, what is it? What newness can I share? And and then it kind of started to work together like that, and it became a book where I shared a lot of stuff that people don't know about me without even intending to. It's just when I would come to topics in my life, I'm like, oh, nobody knows about all my relationships with these kids. I'm like, that's funny. Like, people will not expect me to have so many kids in my life. That's the last thing people would think of me. So when I started thinking about what things I haven't shared, they became plentiful.
And you do touch on the breakup, and I love all the stuff about your therapy throughout the book. I think is so incredibly helpful. And I earmarked so many different spots. And there was something on the breakup that I hope you don't mind. I'm sharing it. There's so many great things in this book. But you say, my great breakup with Joe was a test for me to reach a higher path, one where I didn't reduce myself to match the way I felt. Here's an opportunity for growth, for soul elevation. If you handle this with grace, you will graduate from that old self. And it hit me so hard because I do think whether it's a relationship or just moving forward in life, I think that's just such great advice because sometimes you look at a hard scenario and you think it's too much to take on or whatever. But I think reframing it and thinking, well, if I get through this, I'm reaching that higher path. And I just thought that it really hit me. So when mentioning your breakup, I thought that was great.
Oh,
Really
I love
helpful.
that. Yeah, I think that's the way how it's kind of how we have to approach anything that's hard or hurtful or painful, or knowing we're about to go through a tunnel of pain. to look at it like as a challenge. Like, I'm going to get through this. I'm the person who's gotten me through everything else I've been through. So I'm a pretty reliable source at this point. And to kind of go at it like there's going to be a beginning, middle, and end, because there is.
Right. What would you, I know everyone always asks, like, what would you say to your younger self? What would you say to yourself who was right before pre-therapy, pre kind of diving into all of that work you talk about doing on yourself?
I mean, I would never have told myself how long and arduous that journey would be. I hate using the word journey in those terms, so forgive me. I have to forgive myself, actually, because I'm the one who has the problem with the word. But like, if somebody had told me how laborious, that it's going to go on for so long, and even when you get done with therapy, you're not done. You have to then take in the information. You have to absorb the information. Then you have to apply the information. It's like a three-pronged process, and it takes a long fucking time. And I wouldn't have gone into it had I known how long it was going to take, because I'm not. I don't stay with things very long. I have to like move on, and I bounce around a lot. But it was the most worthwhile endeavor I've ever voluntarily, subjected myself to, because the analysis and self-awareness and all of the things that you get with therapy are just invaluable. It's amazing to find out about yourself from somebody who has no skin in the game, so to speak. When your parents or your siblings or your friends are giving you feedback, it's not always received in the way that you can receive it from somebody who does this as for a living. At least for me, I take advice from people who are professionals more seriously than I would anyone else. And so it was a great experience. I am a completely different person because of it. I don't know anyone who's gone to therapy and things got worse. Like, I don't know anyone who comes out of therapy and was like, that was a big waste of time. So I don't think there's any way you can reduce it to something that's not beneficial. But it was just the duration of it that I was like, oh my God, again, like, how many more conversations do I have to have about getting out of my own asshole that are about me? When you're so, in order to become less self-involved, you have to become more self-involved.
Right. It's interesting. There's a couple people in my life who I've been trying to kind of get on board with therapy for a long time, and they still sort of have that old way of thinking. And I was just telling them recently that yeah, there's no one is coming out of therapy and worse. Like, everyone pretty much goes there and is like, oh, this was a good thing for me. It's very rare you ever would hear someone say, oh no, what a waste of time that was. Like, I can't believe I spent an hour fucking doing that. So it is good advice. You mentioned these young people in your life, and you write about them in your book. What is your relationship like with them now? Obviously, you wrote the book a year ago. Is there any kind of update you can give people who might read that?
No, they're all in my life. I mean, I was on the phone with one of them, getting them a ride last night it's so funny. I mean, I play this like stepfather role. Last night, she's like, I need to get out of the city, and I have to go up to the country. And I was like, oh, honey, don't worry. I'll find someone who's going to drive you. And I called two friends. I'm going upstate. I'm like, oh, they'll pick you up at 6. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. Like, no one would ever, even my own family is like, what is this? Like, and my house in Whistler is filled with so many kids. I'm not there right now. But I usually spend most of my winters in Whistler, and that is just a kid zone. Like, every kid in the neighborhood has my door code. Every kid, I come home from skiing, there are kids there. When I go to bed, there are kids there. They set up shop. They claim different rooms. There's like this 3 sets of girls, these 2 twins and a friend. They go up to the upper living room. Like, that's their zone. They have their own bathroom. It's like I have a boarding house for children.
It's good too. I think, I don't know, it takes a community to raise someone. And yeah, I think it's cool that you play that role in their lives. And you sort of touch on this very briefly in the book, but I was just imagining you going to like their sporting events and stuff. And I was like, I would love to be a fly on the wall to see you with the other moms there. And like, you talk about how they're sort of looking at you.
People are like, where is Chelsea Handler doing at a fucking child sporting event? Like, I mean, it's got a lot of molestery vibes if you didn't know better.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, so I was a huge fan of Chelsea lately. Obviously, so many of us were. What do you kind of miss most about that time in your life?
Excuse my cough here. Trying to clear my throat. What do I miss most about that time? I mean, it was. No, I don't really miss
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
I kind of move on. And I love what I loved most about it was just how ridiculously silly we were. It was like being
yeah.
in a fraternity house, and getting paid to be stupid. Like we just were so stupid. It was constant practical jokes, constant fun, margarita Thursdays, margarita Tuesdays. We were just always running through the offices, like just playing jokes on each other and having the best time and having such success. It was kind of like we were in our own little Idaho. Like when people used to say, "Oh, how does it feel to be the only woman in late night?" I'm like, the only woman in late night. Like I'm not even looking at those guys. I'm having the time of my life. Like I get to hire all my friends. We're all comedians. We're having a great time. It wasn't like that. It was kind of like you were at summer camp, and it went on for 7 years, which is exactly the time I think you start to get that itch. It's called a 7-year itch because it's true. After 7 years, you're like, is this going to tide me over for very much longer? I kind of felt like I wasn't, this was too, it was becoming too easy and too effortless.
Right. I loved how you introduced so many comedians to the world. Was there anyone, this might be a crazy question, but is there a couple comedians who you looked at and you're like, God, I can't wait to introduce these people to the world or showcase their talents because you just think like they're so fucking funny. And obviously, I'm sure everyone on your show, but were there a couple where you're just like, that person is like they can tell a joke like nobody else, and like you were excited to kind of spot.
Fortune Feimster for sure was one of those people. I mean, there were so many people. Kevin Hart was his first. It was on our roundtable. Joe Coy, there were so many people, and we had a panoply of like just misfits. And that's like my whole thing. My whole life has been like the underdog, even though I don't appear to be an underdog. I've always felt like an underdog. I've always felt like I didn't fit in. And so to be able to like bring all the people who don't fit in together was really like joyful and also effortless. Like I didn't have to think about that. I didn't have to think about being inclusive. I was inclusive by nature. There were lots of women around. There were lots of gay people around. There were lots of minorities. Like we weren't even in a time where we had to address that because it was such a natural, organic way to be, because that's what comics are.
Right. Yeah, it was so fun to tune in every day. And you would also get to see, I mean, I'm a gay man myself, so it was nice to be able to see like a gay comedian on TV because you weren't seeing them anywhere else. I always sort of wish that I don't know if this was even possible legally, but sort of just did that format again on E! Or some other network, the 3-panel with talking about pop culture, because it was so funny to tune in every day.
I think they have tried to do it a few times.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like it's the most original idea. Bill Maher does. He has 3 people on. I mean, it's not like what Chelsea Lately was, but there are other shows. Taylor Tomlinson does it on her show After Midnight with 3 comics on. I mean, they've redone it a bunch, and it's not. I don't think it's the most original idea. I think we probably, it's looked at as our idea, but it's really just a chemistry thing, getting chemistry right, getting people, being able to share the spotlight. Right. For a comedian is used to being on stage with a microphone all by themselves for a reason, so that no one else is talking. So to get 4 comedians that can sit and share the jokes and bounce off of each other, that was just a very special kind of chemistry that we had.
You're also a great interviewer. What makes a good talk show guest? Like what makes someone a good easy interview?
Well, anyone who talks freely and isn't so guarded or self-conscious. You want to have a conversation. Being a good listener is a great skill set for being an interviewer and being an interviewee, but being able to talk naturally, organically about your life without, kind of darting around in your head like, is this okay to say? Is that okay to say? Like, I've always spoken freely. Yes, I've gotten myself into trouble. I'm still standing here. I still have a very healthy career. Like, I've had more success than I probably could have ever imagined. So I'm always a proponent of being who you are and not being shy about it. I mean, we live in the age of social media. There's not a lot of mystique left. There's not a lot of like, I've never taken myself so seriously that I'm like, I'm not talking about that. But a lot of people are pretty private, and so I think a great guest is someone who can just has a sense of humor about themselves first and foremost.
Right. And you're doing a Vegas residency. What can people expect when they come see you in Vegas?
Oh, party time. I do
Yeah.
my Vegas residency is once a month for 2 years. So I go, which is my favorite schedule. So it's like my next show is March 18th, I think. And then I have one on April 21st. So it's perfect. I basically turn it into a weekend for all my friends. We come out, they come out, we hook them up with hotel rooms, we gamble. I've never lost a single dollar at the Cosmopolitan Casino
What do you
because I
play? What do you gamble? What do you like?
blackjack.
Yeah.
Always
Okay. Me
blackjack. I
too.
never
Me
go
too.
to, I love I love gambling. And I love to pay for all the people who are with me gambling too, because I want people to hang out and not be worried about losing money because I know if I'm at the table, we will win. And we have always won every week. And I'm convinced that I have made that casino lucky.
I love that. I always feel like with blackjack, at least you feel like you're using your brain a little bit. Like even if it's kind of crazy, at least I'm like activating my brain. Whereas like a
Yeah, like
slot,
slots, it's like you're pulling a slot. Like, what does that have to do with
yeah.
anything?
Or my brother does craps a lot, and like I'm like, what are we? What is this? You're just putting something on a number.
Yeah, craps is fun when you're with like a group of people and someone knows what's up.
Wait, Chelsea, I have to ask you about a movie you did, which is a crazy thing. I know it wasn't like crazy popular or anything, but I saw it like opening day. I think it came out a few days before Valentine's Day. It was This Means War with Tom Hardy and Chris Pine. And I remember seeing it and just thinking I had always wanted that like Bonnie Hunt, Judy Greer role where it's like you get to come in and be funny and then you get to go. And you were that and This Means War. And to me, that was always like the dream. Like, let me come in, be funny, and then get out of there. But anyway, was there any kind of memories from that? And also, who would you choose if you had to choose between Chris Pine and Tom Hardy? Because they're both so hot, or they were at least to me.
They were.
They are to me.
Tom Hardy, was he a dick? I mean, he has a history of being a dick. And he was never a dick to me, no. I found him quite entertaining. And Chris Pine, who would I choose between? I mean, they're both kind of hot and they're in different ways. But I did that movie because Reese was like, will you do this movie with me? And I was like, of course. And, you know, I'm playing the best friend of her and her romantic love interest. So we had a really fun time doing that movie. We filmed in Vancouver, but I didn't really film anything with Chris or Tom. It was mostly with Reese.
Yeah. And I saw in an interview you recently did that you want to kind of dive a little more into acting. Is there anything on the horizon when it comes to acting?
Yes, there is actually, but I can't mention what it is. But I decided I'm going to be 50 this year. So I may as well like reset. Like I want to reset and do some things I haven't really focused on. Like I know all the things I'm good at doing, but I've never really focused on acting because I'm just so much better at being my own boss, you know, being on a set where I'm in charge, not having a director or someone tell me what to do or a studio giving me notes. Like that's really not my jam. My podcast, Dear Chelsea, I get to do whatever I want. My stand-up, I get to do whatever I want. I also have a new stand-up special that's coming out March 25th for Netflix, which is called The Feeling. And
were you always like this to jump around in all these different areas? I love that. And it's, yeah. Have you always been like that as a little kid? Were you kind of jumping around?
Yeah. I mean, I don't stay in one place very long. I'm kind of just like I'm just always like, okay, I got this. I nailed that. Let's move on to this. Like
you're not scared to move into that new, when you're saying, let's move on to this, that doesn't scare you at all.
No, I mean, I feel like anything, I want to be challenged. I want to be challenged. I don't want to be comfortable. I don't want to coast. That's not interesting to me. You know, every book I've written has been a challenge. Every tour I've done and stand-up special has been a challenge, you know, in terms of like creating a storyline, creating a beginning, a middle, and an end, and keeping the vibes high. Like what feeling do you want to leave everybody with? When I'm doing stand-up, it's one thing. When I'm writing books, it's another thing. When I'm doing my podcast, it's another thing. So but bouncing around helps keep me interested in all of the things. Cause I think if I were just to do one thing, I'd be pretty bored.
But I think so many times people in your position would say, oh, I've never done a documentary series before. So why would I even try? And I think it's so cool that you're like, I'm going to fucking do that. Then I'm going to do the stand-up special. And now I want to do an acting thing. It's like, I don't know, that I feel like that's always the dream. And it's so often seems like people maybe stop themselves from moving into a new direction.
Yes, I'm sure. Yeah. Like I'm that absolutely is true. But also you have to be able to take risk if you're going to get big rewards in life. Like you really do. I mean, my documentary series that I did for Netflix was hugely successful. And like totally changed the course and direction of my career. Like I loved doing that. And it could have been a big failure, but it wasn't. And I'm not afraid of failure. Like it's okay to fail. I feel like that's how you get really good at stuff, is when you do have big disappointments. It's not fun when they're happening, but if you have the foresight and like the long-term idea of things, you can understand that you don't just get better at stuff by always succeeding at it. You have to have some mishaps.
I just saw an interview with Lady Gaga this morning, and she was talking about Joker 2. And I thought it was such a fresh perspective. She's like, yeah, a lot of people didn't like it, but you can't get bogged down on that. If you're making art, there's going to be times where it's hit or miss. And I don't know, it kind of hit me. I love that view of disappointment, because we're going to fail and shit's not going to always work. And
also to embrace the failure, like to be ashamed, and to like, I heard what she said and I thought, yeah, that's good. That's cool that she said that, because like they're getting so much shit about that movie. I haven't seen it, but you do have to kind of accept when something, okay, great, you didn't like it. I understand. Instead of being in denial, so many times our egos play such a bigger role, and we allow our egos to like deny us of the truth of what's happening. And that's just prolonging pain. Like anytime you're in denial of something not working out, you're prolonging the reality of the pain of the situation. I'd rather just embrace the pain, welcome it, have it be over, and move on to the next thing.
Yeah. Do you worry focusing on the industry, do you worry that some of the gatekeepers and stuff are getting more and more fearful of kind of thinking outside the box? That worries me when it comes to movies or TV or anything within the arts. I just feel like it's contracting so much, and so many executives feel like it feels like they're afraid to take any risks, and that worries me a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I hear that a lot too. I'm not really in that, scene as much, because I am a creator, not making the decisions about what's going to be on and what's going to be, what they're going to put on TV. It's so funny. It's like we have so much more TV than we've ever had, and the quality is just like lower than it's ever been, not maybe ever been, but we're just like in a funk where everything is just like mid. You're like, okay, that's good. But you forget about it after you see it. You're like, I forgot what that series even was about. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think, in times like when there's a lot of change in an industry, or there's change in the economy, or whatever you want to point to, there always are the outliers, and there are people who can succeed within those dynamics and within those parameters. And it's like Viktor Frankl, being in the Holocaust, and the fact that he was like, the one thing they couldn't take away from me was my attitude and my mind. Like they couldn't take away that. They could take away my clothes. They could shave my head. They could make me walk around naked. They could starve me, but they weren't going to take away my mind. And it's like, when you're dealing with an industry that's changing so much and shifting so much, not to compare Hollywood to the Holocaust, the Holocaust, I just renamed it to the Holocaust, by the way, not to, compare the two, because it's not a comparison, but you can excel within constraints. When industries are constrained or going through contractions, as you said, there are people that still excel under those constraints. And so I always just try to be someone to not really pay attention to all the noise that's going around, and focus on what are you working on? What are you putting out there? Focus on that. And, it'll find its way.
Mm-hmm. I know you're a huge reader. Throughout your book, you talk about that, of course, in interviews and everything. Is there anything you're reading now that you really like?
What am I reading now? Resilience. It's a book called Resilience. So for my podcast, Dear Chelsea, like people call in and ask for advice all the time. And when I came out of therapy, I had all of this, like I had this huge arsenal of advice, and like, I had learned so much information from this guy, and he was really expensive. So I was like, all right, not a lot of people are going to be able to afford a therapist like this. I want to like share everything I've learned. And then as I started, and now I'm in my 5th season of my podcast, and I'm like, oh, like I realize I have to keep reading new self-help books. Like I have to have new information to share with my callers, because I can't just keep doling out the same old bullshit. It's like, okay, write a gratitude journal, self-affirmation, start meditating. That eventually you're like, okay, I've got to come up with some more stuff. So right now I'm reading Resilient. I'm rereading this book, Letting Go, that I read a couple times a year, by David Hawkins, which is pretty powerful. And then this book, Resilient. I mean, all these self-help books are pretty much saying the same thing, but they can get you, it's what resonates with you and what doesn't. Certain sentences and metaphors hit you and certain metaphors don't. So it's really about just kind of connecting to new ways of saying the same thing.
Right. Well, Chelsea, I know I have to let you go. The last thing I ask all of my guests these next two questions: if you were choosing for People Magazine Sexiest Man Alive, who would you choose? And then also your favorite Mariah Carey song. I love Mariah Carey.
Pedro Pascal, I think, is the sexiest man alive. And has Mariah Carey written a song about Pedro Pascal yet? Because that would be my favorite song.
Let's say Touch My Body could be about that. We don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I can't name one song that Mariah Carey sings just because I'm not good with song names. But I mean, who doesn't love Mariah Carey? I mean, she is one hot mess.
Yes. Chelsea, what a dream come true. I mean, really, this was a dream come true because I have followed your work forever. I hope everyone enjoys I'll Have What She's Having. You're a When Harry Met Sally fan, I would assume, right?
Oh, yes, I am.
Would you say that's your favorite rom-com? Do you have a favorite rom?
No, but it's up there. It's in the top 10.
Okay, You've Got Mail is mine, but I worship the ground Meg Ryan walks on, so I especially also love the title. Chelsea, thank you so much for taking the time, and everyone pick up your book. Go see you in Vegas. Check out your podcast, Dear Chelsea, and thank you so much, Chelsea, for taking the time.
Thank you so much.